NBC just exposed Zohran Mamdani as a complete fraud on national television, and his own supporters are turning on him. The same guy who spent months calling Trump a fascist and promising to fight him with everything, he had just sat there like an obedient child while Trump mocked him to his face. The contrast is absolutely brutal. Meet the Press refused to let him squirm away from the hard questions. And what we witnessed was a total humiliation. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this gets even worse. The meeting that delivered nothing. Zohran walked into that meeting with Trump needing one thing above all else: a guarantee that federal troops wouldn't be deployed into New York City streets. He left empty-handed after all the public spectacle, after bending the knee and agreeing to cooperate with ICE operations. Trump gave him absolutely zero assurances about keeping the National Guard out. What makes this even more pathetic is that Zohran had already thrown his entire base under the bus by dismantling sanctuary city protections, the very policies his supporters elected him to defend. He traded away his principles for a handshake and a photo op, and got nothing concrete in return. The optics alone were devastating. A self-proclaimed progressive revolutionary reduced to begging for scraps from the man he called an existential threat to democracy. Reports now show ICE is already planning major operations in New York City for early next year, which means Zohran's capitulation was completely worthless. But what's really shocking isn't just that he failed to secure any promises. It's how drastically his entire communication style transformed the moment he stepped into that room. The transformation from fighter to politician. During his campaign, Zohran's speeches averaged under 2 minutes of direct, fiery statements that left no room for interpretation. Now listen to his answers in this interview. They stretch past 4 minutes of circular reasoning and bureaucratic language that says absolutely nothing. He went from "Trump is a fascist threat who must be stopped" to "we need to focus on areas of potential collaboration while acknowledging our differences." That's not political maturity, that's calculated cowardice. The man who built his entire brand on being the unapologetic democratic socialist who would never compromise is now speaking like every establishment Democrat he claimed to oppose. His supporters didn't elect another Chuck Schumer, but that's exactly what they're getting. Every word out of his mouth now sounds focus grouped and poll tested, the complete opposite of the authentic fighter persona that won him the election in the first place. He's become exactly what he campaigned against. A politician more concerned with maintaining access to power than actually fighting for the people who put him there. What makes this transformation even more disturbing is how he handled the one moment where he could have actually stood his ground. The fascist moment that broke the internet. Trump literally gave Zohran a free pass to call him a fascist on camera, and Zohran still couldn't do it with any conviction. The exchange lasted 12 seconds. And in those 12 seconds, you can see Zohran's entire political identity collapse. He wasn't preparing to say yes. His body language, his hesitation, everything pointed to him, pivoting away from the question entirely. Trump read him like a book, mocked him for it, and essentially said, "Go ahead, prove you have a spine." The result was a mumbled acknowledgement so weak that even Trump patted him condescendingly, like rewarding a dog for a trick. Over 3 million people have watched that clip online, and the consensus is unanimous. This is not what leadership looks like. The irony is almost too painful to watch. The man who campaigned on never backing down from Trump couldn't even maintain eye contact when actually confronted. His own campaign volunteers are sharing the clip with captions like, "This is not the person we knocked on doors for," and it's hard to disagree with them. The contrast between his tough campaign rhetoric and this submissive performance reveals everything voters need to know about who Zohran Mamdani really is when the cameras are rolling and power is on the line. But the real question nobody's asking is why Zohran would even agree to meet with someone he genuinely believes is a fascist in the first place. The ideology that doesn't add up. Democrats have spent 8 years telling us that negotiating with Trump is equivalent to collaborating with authoritarian regimes. That any cooperation legitimizes fascism itself. Zohran himself tweeted 47 times between 2022 and 2024. comparing Trump's rhetoric to historical dictators and warning about the dangers of normalization. Now, he's sitting across from this supposed fascist, discussing affordable housing, like their colleagues working on a bipartisan city council project. Either Trump isn't actually a fascist, and Zohran was lying to his voters for emotional manipulation, or Trump is a fascist, and Zohran just proved he'd collaborate with authoritarianism when it benefits his career. There's no third option here that makes him look principled. His own supporters are posting screenshots of his old tweets next to images from the Oval Office meeting. And the hypocrisy is indefensible. The whole resistance narrative falls apart when the resistors are perfectly willing to sit down for friendly photo ops the moment they gain power. This exposes the entire Democratic strategy as nothing more than performative outrage designed to rally the base while maintaining business as usual behind closed doors. The activist groups that funded his campaign are now openly questioning whether they wasted their money on someone who talks like a revolutionary but governs like a centrist. But the interview got even more uncomfortable when his own political ally was used against him, Bernie's border bombshell. Bernie Sanders just admitted on record that Trump managed border security better than Biden, and Zohran couldn't bring himself to agree with his own political mentor. Think about that for a second. Bernie Sanders, the Democratic socialist icon, the man who Zohran modeled his entire political career after, publicly acknowledged that Trump's border policies were more effective. When asked directly if he agreed, Zohran gave a non-answer about not spending much time comparing presidents, and pivoted to vague platitudes about humanity in immigration policy. Border crossings dropped by 73% during Trump's peak enforcement periods compared to 2021 levels. But Zohran can't admit that reality because it would mean validating Trump's approach. He's so locked into opposition that he can't even agree with objective data when his own political hero presents it. This wasn't about policy analysis. This was about Zohran being too weak to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. When even Bernie Sanders is willing to give credit where it's due, and you're still dodging the question, you've lost all credibility as a serious politician. The host gave him multiple chances to simply acknowledge basic facts, and Zohran chose political theater over honesty every single time. If you can't agree with Bernie Sanders on border security when the data backs him up, you're not being principled. You're being deliberately dishonest with voters who deserve better. But his weakness became even more obvious when the conversation shifted to money. The $9 billion fantasy. Zohran's entire campaign promised $9 billion in new social programs funded by taxing the wealthy and corporations. But he needs Governor Hochul's signature to make any of it happen. She hasn't committed to raising a single tax, and when pressed repeatedly about whether she would support his plan, Zohran couldn't give a straight answer. He kept repeating phrases like productive conversation and working together on affordability, without ever confirming she'd actually raise taxes. His universal child care program alone requires $3.2 billion annually. His free bus program needs $1.8 billion, and his rent reduction plan demands another $2.4 billion in subsidies. Where's that money coming from if Hochul won't raise taxes and Trump is threatening to cut federal funding? The math doesn't work, and Zohran knows it. He's 40 days away from taking office, and his signature promises are already collapsing because he never had a realistic plan to fund them. He sold his supporters a fantasy, and reality is hitting before he's even been sworn in. This is what happens when you run on ideology instead of actual governance. The numbers eventually catch up with you. Political analysts are already predicting he'll be a one-term mayor who accomplishes almost nothing of substance from his ambitious progressive agenda. The people who maxed out their donations and spent weekends canvassing for him are now realizing they bought a luxury car with no engine. It looks impressive, but it's not going anywhere. This is just the beginning of Zohran's collapse, and his supporters are waking up to the reality of what they actually voted for. If you want to see more politicians getting exposed for who they really are, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss when we break down their lies. Drop your thoughts in the comments below about whether Zohran can survive this humiliation. I'll see you in the next one.